I think one of the biggest barriers to adults playing is distraction and stress. They really get in the way of that. And one of the reasons that we are so distracted and we are so stressed is adults, more so when you compare them to kids, are kind of obsessed with goals and productivity. Like, we find it really hard to do things just because.
This is Emma Worrollo, founder of the Playful Den, a collective that supports people unleashing the power of play, and my guest on this episode of Lives of Tomorrow. Do you know how to play? You're probably tutting, shouting back, obviously, but have you really thought about it? The truth is, many adults today have simply forgotten how to play. We know that play is essential for kids, right? It sparks their imagination, helps them grow, shapes them who they'll become in the future. What about adults? Play isn't just for kids. It's proven to ease stress, boost happiness, and even inspire creative problem solving. So why aren't we doing it more? Today, we'll explore all of these topics, finding out what they mean, why play matters, and how to rediscover it at any age. I'm Carla Buzasi, and I'm the CEO of WGSN, the world's leading trend forecasting company, and you're listening to Lives of Tomorrow. But let's get back to you, Emma. Can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
I am I suppose someone who has built a career on thinking kid. That's been my professional experience. So I have a background in research. I quite early on in my qualitative research career specialised in children and found it quite effortless to look at the world from their point of view. I built an agency. I ran that agency for 11 years. It was a global insight agency specializing in Generation Alpha. And what I noticed from my time looking at the world through the lens of kids is that I'm a very playful person naturally anyway, but forcing myself to be in this state of childlike wonder was having all of these other benefits on other parts of my life outside of my career that I became very fascinated in, such as how I navigated stress, such as my parenting style, how I remained in a long-term relationship. And I became very interested in the role of play in adulthood. I'd studied it extensively in childhood and then launched Playful Den. I exited that agency and started to become more interested in helping individuals, businesses, teams to unlock their playful self, to reconnect with this ability to think kid that I'd been doing for so long. And that's what I spend all my time doing now.
I find this absolutely fascinating. At WGSN, we've talked a lot and forecast a lot about the sort of rise of the kidult, but this is sort of taking it a whole step further. So how do you teach an adult to play?
Good question. And the difficulty varies depending on how far they've lost touch with their playful self. It is possible for everyone to get it back. So playfulness is slightly more relevant to adults, I think, than play. So perhaps if we start there with understanding the nuance. So play is an activity. It's quite hard to wrap your hands around what it actually is, but my definition, I call it focused attention that feels fun. I think that's quite an easy way to understand it. Children need to do this as much as they possibly can. So children should be playing all the time, really. And for children, the role of play is to sort of learn and almost like rehearse how to become an adult and how to sort of get to that stage of adulthood. For adults, we have less time to play. And I'm a realist. I'm a really sort of down to earth person. And I'm under no illusions that anyone can just quit their 9 to 5 and go off and play all day long. Whilst I would love that, it's not a reality. So for adults, playfulness becomes more relevant to us. And if play for children is about learning to become an adult, for adults, I believe playfulness is how to survive being an adult when we get there. So Playfulness is where we take something that is not necessarily play. We apply the characteristics of play to make it more fun. And that's what playful people do. Everyone probably has a person in their life that they can think of when they think, oh yeah, so-and-so, she, he, they're a really playful person. And they have this ability to make boring things interesting, or to seem to be able to find an opportunity anywhere. Even when things go wrong, they sort of spin that and find some sort of opportunity for fun in it. And that is what our characteristic of playfulness does for us. It is not something that some people are born with and some people are not. This is not a personality trait. This is a human skill, a human characteristic that we all have, but we just have to keep in touch with it.
Okay, so we did one of our most popular podcasts with someone at Lego, and if I think, right, I need to play more, that seems like quite an accessible thing to go and do. So I'm going to, borrow one of my stepkids' Lego sets, and I'm going to do that, and it'll be kind of focused. But in the instance, or the way you're describing it, so let's say I'm having a really stressful week at work, how would I bring playfulness into my life to try and counter that stress rather than going, I don't know, picking up a colouring book or a Lego set?
Yeah, I love this so much. I think one of the biggest barriers to adults playing is distraction and stress. They really get in the way of that. And one of the reasons that we are so distracted and we are so stressed is adults, more so when you compare them to kids, are kind of obsessed with goals and productivity. Like, we find it really hard to do things just because. And that is, I would say, my biggest tip of how to get more playfulness into your life is start doing more things where the stakes are very low and there is no purpose. So that might be something as simple as you're walking to work and you see a puddle, and rather than go around it, you jump over it. Start with tiny, teeny little things. And I can prove to you that everyone already knows how to do this, because when we are doing a boring chore, say we've got to empty the dishwasher, we've got to put that pile of laundry away, most people will do one thing, which is put music on. And you have to sort of wonder why. I don't ever remember being taught that. I don't think it's something that I ever see as a hack online. It's almost this sort of primal instinct. Oh, massive pile of laundry, get the tunes on. And what do you start to do? Maybe you have a little shuffle, you have a little groove, you start to sort of move through that task differently. And most people know how to do that. It's almost like wired in. And I think it's just about taking that as evidence that this is already a skill that I have, and just doing it in other places and other parts of your life.
Okay. So you work with quite a few sort of big companies. So if I was going to bring you into WGSN next week and say, I want you to make this a more playful workplace, lower people's stress, I probably would want them to be more productive as a consequence. What would you do with a company rather than one individual?
Yeah, I think that point that I just made about lowering the stakes and not having goals is one of the reasons why work always feels unplayful, because we always have those things. It's impossible to get rid of those, but you can introduce moments of those into your process. So yes, you have a deadline, you have a goal, you have a big thing that you need to do, but what are the points along the process to get there where you allow people to step into a moment where their stakes are lower, where they are allowed to engage their imagination and their creativity, where there is no specific goal. And I think this is hard for a lot of cultures to do, because if they're so wired for this productivity, so at the end of this meeting, I need this, I need 10 ideas, I need this, then it's really hard to do. But I think finding those little pockets of time where people are allowed to just be and bring themselves and bring their creativity and ideas with that pressure taken off can help you in the long run get to that big heavy pressure goal.
Okay. Right. So if I think about the definition of play in today's world, I would say, especially if I was talking to young people and I talk about playing, they would think about that through a gaming kind of viewpoint. So, I'm going to go and game, that's playfulness. Do you define both things in the same way. So do you think play has evolved? Play now can be virtual or it can be, in real life. And depending on your answer with that, is gaming a good way for us to get more playful as we get older?
Yeah, it is. Gaming is definitely play. I think the definition of play is often misunderstood because people think it's about a type of activity, and it's not. It's about a mindset. It's about how you enter into an activity. So some people, when I get into this with them and they, we start talking about flow and we start talking about where do you feel like you lose a sense of time? Where do you feel like you really come alive? Where do you feel like you are not so focused on those goals and that? And for some people, it's like things like making lists, planning. Like everyone has someone in their group who has the play personality of the director. This is taken from Dr. Stuart Brown's play personality study. The director loves organizing. They just love it. It's like if you're doing a hen party or something, that person is just going to spring into action. And so it's not so much about what the activity is. It's the frame of mind that you enter into it with. And I think with gaming, it 100% is play. So when you look at the science of the parts of the brain that light up when we are playing, gaming has this, it's the same part. So it absolutely is play. It can be a brilliant way to connect with a partner. Whenever some of my friends say to me, we're having some marital difficulties, I say, just start gaming, just try, just because it's easy access. It's low pressure. It's very accessible. You can do it in your home. You can do it when you're tired. And it can be that way to see each other in play. So when you're watching those avatars and you're watching how you build your world, how you solve a problem, you get to see one another in play. So I think gaming can be amazing for that. I suppose the only caveat I would add is that ideally we really want variety in our play. That's when it can be very, very exciting and beneficial to us. And especially for us adults, for us grown-ups, we have to remain willing to be an amateur. So again, this is something that we can struggle with in adulthood, is playing the fool. Like you have to be quite vulnerable in play, doing something that you are not an expert in. We tend to do things that we're good at when we exit childhood. So I'm going to keep just doing this running thing because I'm actually got really good at it now and I'm quite skilled. So I'm just going to run a bit further and then I'm just going to enter a marathon. And it's not that that's not play, and it's not that you shouldn't do that. It has obviously wonderful, amazing benefits, but you're not getting novelty. You're not getting variety. You're not experiencing that sense of being an amateur. And it's that is truly the only thing that can keep us youthful, is that trying new things, getting into that amateur state of mind where there's enough challenge to really test you, but also there's a big dollop of fun and joy and pleasure and silliness that comes with learning it.
So fascinating. Right. In a moment, Emma, we're going to get to know you just a little bit better. And I've got some quick fire questions. But before we do that, I want to mention a very special thing for us here at WGSN. While we're talking about the power of play and joy today, I wanted to let you know that next year, WGSN could be on stage at the South by Southwest Festival, which is debuting in London, but I'm going to need your help. We have an amazing talk lined up called The Power of Play, Why It's Game On for Grown-Ups, when we're going to cover how joy will pave the way for creating strong brand-consumer relationships. But I need your help to get on the main stage. So if you've got 2 minutes, we're calling on all our listeners to head over to the community voting portal on the South by Southwest London website, where you can vote to see us on the main stage. Okay, let's get back to you now, Emma. First thing that comes into your head, who do you look up to and why?
This might sound quite abstract, but at the moment, I'm obsessed with women in their 50s. The women in their 50s that I see on LinkedIn, on Instagram, who are rediscovering and pivoting their career at this point in their life. I find it so inspiring, and it gives me such goosebumps and feel good, because I love the thought that your best work is always in front of you. I've always found that an inspiring concept.
That's really interesting. For someone who studied alphas for so many years and spent your life in a totally different generation to then be finding that inspiring. When did you last give up on something?
In COVID was a very playful time for me, and I had a lot of light bulb moments around play. That's when I started creating a lot of content around play. And this whole subject of giving up on something it can be like really emotional, because during that time I got back into roller skating, and I thought, when was the last time I ever did that, and why? So that one comes to mind because I got really back into it, and then again stopped doing it and kind of gave up. Got to a point where, I'd sort of built some of the basic skills, but then it was just very hard, and you're very scared of injury, and I fell out of the habit of doing it.
I can definitely say you're the only person on this podcast to answer that question with the word roller skating, which means this is very memorable for that reason and everything else, but that one specifically. Okay, back to you. What do you rarely share about yourself?
I would say the ins and outs of my mental health. I think as someone who shows up a lot online speaking about play, I think there is a natural assumption that I'm an effortlessly jolly, happy-go-lucky person. And actually, the play is just it's just my therapy. It's the way that I keep myself going. There's quite a lot of complexities with the way that my mind works, and if I didn't do all of those things, I think there would be a very different Emma sitting here now. And I don't really talk about that much because I don't know if I fully understand it yet, and I almost don't feel expert enough to articulate it.
Okay, final question for you. Well, not final question, there's a lot more questions to come, but on you specifically. When are you satisfied with yourself?
I am satisfied with myself when I feel a sense of freedom. So for me, success is all about freedom of time, freedom of what I work on, freedom of how I live my life. This is the thing that I now chase. I used to chase other less playful metrics, and now this is like, so if I have got to the end of the week and I feel like I've had control of my own thoughts, of my own time, of my own creativity, I am immensely satisfied.
Okay, so we're going to look forwards a little bit now into how playfulness, this concept actually, will evolve in the future. So let's start with that point about play as a kind of therapy. So, I mean, there's so much in the press at the moment about ways to combat anxiety, depression, rising wave of mental health issues that we're seeing all across the globe and across multiple different generations. That idea of play as a therapy within this, I haven't seen a huge amount. You sound quite passionate about this. Are there studies showing this to be effective?
There are, yes. And even the NHS is doing social prescribing now. So they've prescribed surfing, they've prescribed roller skating, I believe. So there is a lot of evidence around this. They're prescribing nature. Like, I think the problem with play is the word. When people hear it, they think water fights, bouncy castles, like extrovert, children. And, perhaps quite rightly so, play is sort of owned by children because absolutely essential for them. But that's also somewhat unfortunate for adults because we distance ourselves from the concept and we believe that it's perhaps not quite for us. And this is also like quite culturally nuanced. So other cultures, places like over in Scandinavia and Denmark and Norway, they have a much different relationship with play, and it's much more sort of embedded in their values and their culture. Whereas I think here, kind of in, sort of in the UK, Northern Europe, America, we're slightly more productivity orientated. So the problem is with discussing play in the context of mental health is it's not always taken seriously and it's not always understood. So I think once the understanding clicks, it's easy to bring it into your life in a way that is accessible and meaningful to you.
it's kind of a muscle memory in terms of it becoming a habit. And I think as an adult, there are so many things that we're trained to become habits, whether that's exercise or, boring things like brushing your teeth and making sure you do that. But trying to find that moment of that unhooking and not having a goal, I think that's really interesting as someone who's quite goal obsessed.
So I'm happiest if I go for a walk and I plant some sort of like seed of an idea into my head before I go, sort of set myself almost like a brief for the walk. And then I do the walk and it's, somewhere in nature. And I just let my imagination play with whatever stimulus I've planted in there before I go. That's me, like truly at play. That's like when I am happiest. That's just ideal for me.
I think as we're talking, what I'm finding quite interesting and sort of reflecting is that there's sort of no pressure with playfulness. So even thinking about joy, strategic joy, the word strategic within there, like this is something I've got to go and find. I've got to do something to make that happen as a coping mechanic. Whereas playfulness, you're sort of saying is, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. It's just it's the being there and doing it and giving yourself no expectations for it. Is that right?
That's right. And also if you think about, at the beginning, we talked about the pile of laundry. Playfulness doesn't need some sort of like intense immersive experience to come alive. Actually, it's most powerful when it's quite stripped back. So one of my favorite things that I have experienced recently is there's this street art trend called eye bombing, which is putting googly eyes on inanimate objects in streets. And if you go to New York, someone's done it everywhere. It's as soon as you see it, you can't stop. And this is a great example of playfulness, because the stimulus that has been used is not the beautiful flower wall that's very kind of aesthetic. It's something completely inanimate that has been slightly tweaked so you see it in a very different way, and that sparks that sense of playfulness.
We have got a big beauty forecast, which was published, I think, just last week. And there's many, many different aspects to it and recommendations. But there is one great case study in there. And this is very much the kind of the kidulting and trying to make things more playful. The woman's created this new beauty line, and the bottles, she gave her, I think it was her daughter, her child, some Play-Doh and said, mold a bottle for me. And they've then used that to create the shapes of these bottles, and it's so fun.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
And it looks so different to everything else that's on the shelves at the moment. And I think it feels very playful, and it came from play, and there's something really just lovely about it. It made me smile when I was looking at these pictures.
Yeah, and I think we've come out of it, and maybe we're still in it, but like this whole rebranding of brands and places on the high street, we sort of stripped everything away. And I think there's such a craving to get that back. So when you see something like that, it's like, what is that? What are you really looking at there? Well, you're looking at childlike wonder. You're looking at imagination. It's like evidence of imagination.
When we've talked a little bit about this, but different generations, what do you think that we can learn from Gen Alpha that you know so much about? What are they bringing? And we've acknowledged the fact that we all learn from each other now. We live these very intergenerational lives. But what is it that Gen Alpha could be giving those of us who are older?
One thing I love about Gen Alpha, I describe them as world builders. Their mindset and the way that they think is very much in this constant state of building a world. And partly this is where they've entered into the world in the timeline, that they kind of do need to build a new one. It's sort of, going to be the thing that lands on their kind of to-do list. And partly it's because of the way that they play and the digital tools specifically that they have access to. So Minecraft is a massive IP for them. And if you look at what they're actually doing on Minecraft, it's what we just talked about. It's actually evidencing their imagination. I can build a world. Look, here it is. Come in it. Let me show you around it. Come and have a look. Here's how it works. Here's how it looks like. This is how I build houses. This is what my bedroom looks like. This is what my town looks like. And there's loads of games like this that they play where they're actually in this kind of world building mindset. Even games like Dress to Impress, which is a fashion game where you have to design and curate a certain look, a certain aesthetic, and it's competitive. So you have to do this at speed. So here they are curating these worlds, really designing, playing with color, texture, shape, but also doing it at speed now with this game, with a little bit of pressure laid on. So they have these really quite amazing, I think, skills and relationship with how things are built, and they come at it from a completely fresh perspective. Gen Z, very good at identifying problems and going after those. This needs fixing. What are we going to do about it? Call people out, hold people accountable, rally around that. This is a problem, let's fix it. Alpha, I don't know if they're going to be so like that. I think because they're going to be focusing on building something new, that it's going to just, overshadow that problem over there.
That's really interesting. I think there's so much written about Gen Z. They're that generation coming of age at the moment. They're impacting the workforce. They're impacting the way that we live our lives. But their younger, brothers and sisters are not that far behind them. I mean, you've got this kind of overlap anyway. But it's always nice to look and see how those younger generations can teach us. And I think especially on this topic, there is clearly an awful lot to learn. Okay, so to wrap things up, are you more anxious or hopeful for the future of play?
Hopeful, very hopeful, because I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm seeing in the trends in urban design, in playground design, even in the toy category, becoming more leaning into more family, to more adults. I am excited about all of those things. I'm excited that it seems to be aspirational to be a playful person. If we look at Bluey is a kids animation that has shot to success, mainly because it has a cult-like following by parents who are literally learning how to parent by these cartoon dogs. And the way that they parent is through playfulness, through imagination, through games. And it's aspirational. It's how a lot of people want to feel. They want to feel lighter. So I feel like that understanding is evolving. It's still slow, but it's coming. So yeah, I feel hopeful.
Okay. If anyone's listening to this and feel inspired and want to go and be more playful this afternoon or this evening or whatever time of day they're listening to it, what's the one thing they should go and do?
Ask your inner kid. Extend a hand to your inner kid and just say, what do you want to play today? And just see what comes back.
A big thank you to Emma Worrollo, founder of the Playful Den, a collective that supports people unleashing the power of play. My name's Carla Buzasi, and I'll be back with a new episode in 14 days. In the meantime, please catch up on our other podcast, Create Tomorrow, where we'll take a deep dive into our new suite of STEPIC strategies, forecasting the challenges and opportunities for 2027 across 6 key areas: society, technology, the environment, politics, industry, and creativity. And let me just repeat my quick call from earlier before you all go. We're calling on all our listeners to vote now in the community voting portal on the South by Southwest London website to see WGSN on the main stage next year. Please head over and vote for us. I'd be super grateful of your time. And for now, I'll see you next time.